Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. The relationship between the R&D funding system and the research community is a paradox. The funding system has been established to support the research community, and the research community is a happy receiver of the funding. However, the research community is often struggling to approach the funding. Why? Because it's complex, because it requires investing time in understanding procedures, because it is difficult to get an overview of the fitting funding sources, and because, simply, researchers are very busy professionals. scientifyRESEARCH is a consultancy company born out of wanting to give an answer to these challenges for the research community. Founder Judy Mielke and co-founder Gardner have themselves a background in the research community, and they know the ins and outs of exactly these paradoxes. They have built a company with services that helps researchers to get an overview through a funding scheme database, including funding schemes globally, including private funding schemes, all to open up a broader perspective of funding opportunities for the researchers, for them to identify other sources of funding than the very competitive EU funding schemes for R&D. I pulled the two ladies into the virtual podcast studio for a talk about their services and for a talk about the research community and the difficulties approaching funding. It became a nice talk about the conditions for the research community and how to improve access to funding. Please enjoy.
The Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Now, today, that's an example of LinkedIn, the magic of LinkedIn, right? So it's, you guessed regulars, you will know that I pick up a lot of my guests on LinkedIn because that's where the fun happens with The Grant. That's where my flow is of information. That's where I connect with people. That's where I share stuff. That's where I notice through my connections and new connections that keeps building up a lot because I do what I do. New things that pops up, or new things that pop through my feed. And recently I noticed a post from a company called Scientify. I thought, what's this? Scientify. They apparently had developed a business concept around supporting researchers. And this is what I do. I do like to pick up and see when brilliant minds, when people, entrepreneurial spirit, they attack this funding area one way or the other, coming from the research world or from the business world or so on, sort of combining that to help and support and find new ways. Now, I have already been talking way too much, and I have two guests in the room, and I'm not going to say anything more for a while. Anyways, welcome, Judy and Kate.
Thank you, Niels.
Thank you, Niels.
Pleasure to have you in. And I need you shortly to present yourself. So maybe, Judy, can you share a few words about who you are?
Yes, of course, Niels. Yeah, thank you again for having us. So I'm Judy Mielke. I'm the founder of scientifyRESEARCH. I was a researcher, and I've been in science publishing for too long. And I started the business to help researchers, connect with funding information, because it's so important that researchers have the right funding information.
Yeah. And so the background and EU research. So can you put a few more words on your sort of what you've been doing in the field?
I'm a very international researcher. As I mentioned actually in our webinar yesterday, we have I have been living and working in 4 continents and 8 countries. So I have a very international experience. I did my research in immunology in Australia, and then I was in the US, and my publishing career has been in Europe. And the company I launched, we launched this in Sweden. Sweden is a great place for entrepreneurials. So I think most people know that by now.
It is. That I know because I have certain connection with that. So I understand what you're saying there. Thanks. Kate.
Yeah. So, Niels, my name is Kate Gardner. I am the co-founder of scientifyRESEARCH. I'm from the US originally. Like Judy, I've many continents. I'm living on my third continent now. I live in South America now. I live in Brazil. But my connection to the EU, actually, let's go back. I'm from the US originally. My background is in child development and child psychology. I used to work with hospitalized children in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
I moved to Switzerland in 2010, and I lived there for 6 years and started a second career there in academic publishing. And that's where I met Judy. So Judy and I worked together in academic publishing in Switzerland about a decade ago, and that's where we connected. So I worked in academic publishing for 8 years, helped a publisher open their presence and establish their presence and an office in the US. And a few years ago, I was looking for a new challenge, and that's when I noticed Judy had started a company. And I was really impressed with that. And we started speaking, and we realized you can always solve a problem faster when you work together. So this is how it evolved naturally, how we came back together and talked about how we could work together again. So yeah, so I live in Brazil now, and yeah, thanks to my husband's job, I'm living here. But Judy and our company and everyone that works with us on our team, they're all based in Stockholm.
Yeah. So you're the satellite. Halfway around the globe. Now, thanks. Now we're going to bridge right into the main topic. So this is we're going to talk about your company. Yeah, this falls within my segment of Consultants Corner, so to say. This is episodes where I invite consultant companies in, or private businesses within the field, how to share how they do, the business model they do, how they work, and the solutions they have, and how to develop them, and so on. So we're going to talk a lot about what you do. So let's just bridge right into that, and then you share with me. We have a short intro talk about here. That's what we have in the rundown, right? A short intro talk about you guys. But maybe you tell me what sparked the idea about what you're doing.
So, as Kate mentioned, right, we both worked in science publishing for a long time. And one of the things that we always notice is that, we worked across many different academic disciplines. But all researchers have one thing in common. It's a favorite topic of conversation for everybody. So even if you're completely on different sides of the academic spectrums, you always have that to talk about together. And that's research funding. Everybody has that challenge. And we also know that most of the research funding comes from taxpayers' money, right? So your money and my money. And we want them to be used effectively. So when I launched the business, I was like, where can we really add value? How can we help researchers be more efficient, be more productive? Because what researchers are doing are so important, right? We need solutions. We have so many challenges when it comes to the sustainable development goals. How do we meet them? So we need to get the research funding information to the right researchers at the right time. And that's really where the inspiration came from. Yeah, just connect researchers with research funding information.
Did you apply? Did you write proposals yourself? Do you have any background or experience from the backbreaking work of doing this, or have you worked in facilitating research management stuff like this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, as any researcher, right, you're always applying for different types of funding, right?
Mhm.
So, then there's also one thing that sometimes, when we speak with researchers, sometimes they may not even recognize fully that what they are doing is applying for funding. So,
Mhm.
especially in the more early career stages, so researchers may sometimes go, "Oh, I have a scholarship. I'm not applying for funding," but they have applied for funding already. They got that
Mhm.
scholarship to start with, right? So yeah, definitely. So whether it's applying for scholarships, or applying for fellowships, applying for research grants, applying for travel grants, everything for researchers requires work. And well, I would call that not just work. It's actually to showcase your research to the community.
Kate?
Yeah, and back to your question about what experience do we have with writing grants. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we as a company, we've also applied for grants. So we understand
Of course you did.
firsthand the challenge. And it really
Uh-huh.
is about finding the right fit, finding the funder that has
Mhm.
a good match for what you're trying to achieve and what they're trying to fund. And so we've been successful with writing grants for our company. For example, in
Mhm.
Sweden, there's a very nice grant from Vinnova. And so we applied for this grant from Vinnova to work with a recent Marie Curie scholar. So someone who had just finished her PhD in physics, and she worked with us on some data projects. So we've been successful with grants, and that's one.
Mhm.
But we've also applied for grants where we didn't get the funding, right? And then
Of course.
you're left thinking, okay, should we apply again? Should we apply again next year? Should we look for something different? What should we do? So yes, to answer that question, we understand the challenge of applying for grants and how difficult it is. It feels like a lottery sometimes, and you don't always get enough feedback in the end to really understand how can I make this better next time.
So now I'm gonna have a call back to what we were supposed to actually start with, the short intro talk about Scientify, because that's gonna motivate what you just said. So the elevator pitch. So what is it? What are you doing?
We connect researchers with research funding.
Yeah. That's just to the first floor. So if it went to the fifth, what was
Yeah, so if we're going up to the fifth floor on the elevator, um,
you connect them? How do you do that? That would be the follow-up questions from the good. I'm not a journalist, but the podcast host.
yeah, we connect them with funding with a funding database. We have
Mm-hmm.
excellent funding information about global funding opportunities, and it's really well structured data, and that's what we do. We connect them with information to help them understand what is the best or what are the best funding options for me right now. What can I apply for?
Yeah. I think there's much more to that. That's what we've got to dig into here because you have lots of organizations that have done this and some have failed miserably. It seems like you're on the right path because but probably because you know what you're talking about because you're the self researcher. So that's we're going to dig into that later. Now, how did you get started? Because it's so you have a concept, you have database, but it's so what kind of where did it come? So, of course, helping like it's difficult for researchers to motivate. How do they actually make them realize of the value or that to take away the bottlenecks and all this? So, but what so that we all know as researchers, you would know that that's something that goes in between researchers. Or how do I? Oh, do you actually have funding there? And you're like, then you're like, but can you share what sort of when you got structure around? Okay, here's a way that you can actually facilitate this in a way. This is a tool, the idea for the tool. Can you share that?
Mhm. I think, when it comes to the idea for the tool, it's almost like, when as a startup and you're looking for funding for yourself, and you start to look around, and actually, when you start to do that, the internet is a rabbit hole. And you can be there and never come back. And the same thing for research funding. When you, if you're looking for research funding, even if you go to the best, resources, so many different university websites, inevitably it becomes a list of information. The list of information, then you get led down this rabbit hole, and then you're looking for the right funding, you're looking for the right deadlines, and half of the time the pages have moved or the deadlines are closed. That's a reality of research funding information. It's incredibly hard to keep track, even with the best intentions. And so, you need it in a database format in order for that information to make sense. And it has to be continuously updated. And what's also really important is that, this database, it needs to be user-friendly, right? So you need to be able to help researchers filter out the noise and also make that information really pop out, that stand out, so that you can see what is relevant for you. And I think this is actually Kate should be talking more about this, about talking with researchers and research offices. Their experience is really that, they spend a lot of money on research funding databases, but the researchers are not always able to discover that and make the most out of it. So maybe Kate has a lot more to say than I do.
Yeah. So your question is, how did we get started? So Judy had the brilliant idea, and then I jumped on board to join her a little over 2 years ago. It was clear to me when I started working with Judy that there's really no one in the world, honestly, that I could imagine solving a problem better than Judy. So obviously, I wanted to join her on this mission. And so when I started, Judy had already laid the groundwork. The database was built, we had it, and continuous development. But when I started working with Judy, I started speaking to researchers and research managers to really understand all the nuances of the problems that they're faced with. And with researchers, I was actually surprised in the beginning, and now I'm not at all. I don't think
About what?
Here's the surprise. I don't think I spoke with a single researcher in a year that knew they had access to a funding database through their university. And I was speaking with researchers at universities where I knew they did have access to a funding database.
Yeah.
That shocked me. Yeah.
You'd be surprised. But you'd be surprised. You'll even have researchers in research, like institutes where they don't know that they have a support office for funding. You get this. They don't know that they have this kind of structure or support mechanism in their own organization that they say that. Yeah. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, when you're so focused on your research, you're not thinking about who can help me, and you really should. And the people that work in research offices, the work that they do is incredible. And I wish that every researcher knew they had that support. And I also wish for the research managers, the people working in the research offices, that they had really good tools to empower the researchers to do this first piece, finding the funding, identifying what's best for them. And so the research offices can focus on, more important aspects of their work and helping them with the next steps, right? So we want to have a database that really works well for researchers and research offices. And we've thought through the different possibilities and options and what's really important to them. And this is what we focused on, building a tool that works and having a database that's so intuitive that you don't need training on how to use it. That's where we started.
we're going to touch much more about how to develop these things. Let's move into to having a talk about the database itself, because we will get back to what kind of creatures these researchers they are, and how they like how it is to work with them and so on, because that's probably the mirror of how you develop things. So maybe the database. Can you share with us the principles and how it works? And who's gonna pick up that?
Mhm. So the principles is really, you get data for funding, and then you dissect it into the different aspects that are important. And what do I mean by aspects? I really mean about eligibility criteria, right? Because eligibility criteria is like the number one threshold. If you don't meet that, you can forget about reading the rest. You don't need to read through everything. You definitely don't need to prepare an application, because if you don't meet that eligibility criteria, game is over already. So you need to filter through information based on who you are, where you're based, what your academic discipline is, what your career stage is, and sometimes even your citizenship. Some funds even have a specific citizenship requirements. And so, we look at every single funding that comes through, and then we look at it from all the different angles of eligibility criteria, and then present it in our database format so that people can say, hey, if I'm, say, America, who is working in Brazil, or would like to take some travel funding to go to Europe, all these different possibilities and commutations and combinations, and then you can put it into the database, and the database will then tell you, so these are some of your relevant ones.
Okay, so you have filters, so you can place, like where-based, also the area that you work with, scientific area. So what more? How much funding you need?
Yeah, in principle, yes, that would be the next iteration.
If you need, do you also need to put in if you need a partnership, or if you can file alone?
Yes, so you can say, like for a lot of the EU grants, yes, you need a big consortia. So you can say, if you want to have individual research grants, or do you want to particularly look for funds that are for research teams? So all the options, the type of funding. So are you looking for a big grant, or are you just looking for some equipment grant, or if you're looking for a fellowship, a different career stage? So all the different options.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so is that what you meet first when you enter the interface, that you have these filters?
Exactly. Yeah. You put in your requirements, and then you get the data back.
Okay. So you get a list.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried it, so it's the best. It's actually the best way, because I haven't done it. So that makes me ask all the questions, right? So you get a list. So what does that include? Does that include a link to the grant, to the grants available, or does it list more things about it? Because I guess this is about how complex your database is, what it's going to pick up and show them, huh? So what does it show?
So you look at it like, 3 steps. So the first step, you come in and you put in your requirements. And the next step is a list format. And the list format is pretty informative already. Okay. So you can read through this list, and you can basically understand roughly the type of funds it is, the subject area, the location, and then you can, based on that information, so this is just in the title of the grant, so we add some value there too, and then you can decide if you want to find out more. And then if you do want to find out more, so I guess step 2.5 is that you can then go into an expanded version of the data of the funding information. It tells you more. So it tells you what is the title of the grant, who is the funder, and who are they looking for to fund, how much is the funding, and what is the deadline. Right, deadline is very important.
Do you have call deadlines?
Many calls have deadlines. So
but from when you get your listing,
Yeah,
But
in
you
the
get the
listing
list.
too. In the
It
listing,
lists
you
the
can
course,
list
and
the deadline. Yes.
you know why I'm asking this, because that's complex, right? So if you wanna do that for Horizon Europe, thousands of calls, right? In principle, but not in principle, in all practicality. So we'll get back to that about how you made that work. Okay, so you get get all this information, and then do you have a benchmarking? No, I'm just is there a bench where they can see which ones would be most appropriate according to their filters? You understand what I mean?
I think that's a great idea, Niels.
You want me to be a business developer?
I think that's something that we can definitely look into. So at the moment, we don't quite come to that recommendation level to say, hey, you are really suited or you are just kind of suited. But maybe that also it's a really great idea. And then to have more gamification of the process, it would be more fun also. But so for now, people can, based on this information that we provide, the deadline, how much money, whether they're eligible, they can then click on one link. So it's very simple. They can go based on that to make a decision. Do they want to invest more time to look into the funding information in more detail? They then are referred to the funder's website.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that is how it's supposed to be. Because there is a certain limit to how much you can fill into your own interface. You cannot fill in the full information about how to access each Horizon Europe. They have a full website, funding and tenders portal, right, built up for exactly that. So there's no need for you to do that.
Exactly. There's so much detail. There is so much detail in this Horizon Europe funding. It is mind-boggling. And to provide all that information in the first stage to even decide whether you are eligible or interested, it's not necessary to provide all that information. And actually, that's the value add to make it easier for people to understand. It's amazing, the funding from Europe. But to make it accessible to everybody, it takes a lot of effort for individuals to go through that lovely tender portal to find all the information. It's a lot. So we're proud to be here to help digest that information.
Now you say globally.
Yes.
Yeah. How global? How much do you cover? American grants, European grants, and what UK grants?
We cover pretty much all national funders and a lot of foundation funding. We have a very good coverage, international coverage. So US, Canada, Singapore, Australia, Japan.
How do you do that?
Very diverse, very comprehensive. The main reason also, right now for us, a limitation is language. And so we do focus on English-specific funding.
Yeah.
So any funding call that's available in English. So at some point, yes, we would like to be even more comprehensive and cover other languages. But for now, it's English. I think it's really important to keep something in mind about the focus because, when you read as many funding calls as we do, you start to recognize, a change, a shift in the dynamic of the funders. Funders are looking for more multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approaches. More research teams are required, and a lot of international collaborations are required. And so it makes total sense to have all that information in one place for people to discover.
Yeah, and I think our global funding coverage is one aspect of what we're doing that's really appealing to the researchers that use our database. Because researchers in Europe can come to our database and they can see what are all of the US government funding options that I could apply for and bring to Europe. And that's not easy to do looking through all of those funding calls. And so this is something we provide. I really think it's one of the most valuable aspects of our data. And with the foundation funders, who often their funding is available globally, almost unrestricted in many cases, right? These foundation funders will fund any researcher who fits the description almost anywhere in the world. And I think people are not so familiar with all of the foundation funders outside of their country. So,
No. And I would say, how do you... Denmark is probably the place I know best when it comes to the private fund, like the foundation part. Here alone, you have a cacophony of different private foundations funding research. You have the big ones, right? But you also have small ones. But how many do you include? How do you do that?
You have to really love it.
Now, because let's start another place. And without revealing your business secret, how do you get all these data on funding schemes? How on earth do you have a number of how many countries you cover?
How many countries we cover? I'm trying to think from the funded locations, maybe at least 50 countries. We have different kinds. Yeah, this is off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. But
can you say anything about this without revealing how you did this? Because it's, of course, you want to keep to yourself how you but how.
Really important that that whoever wants to get this right has to be so passionate about research funding and also structuring information. Like this is like for us, when we do this, we love to order things, like put life in order. And that's what we do, right? It's a mess out there, so we love to bring some order to the situation. And we have different ways of so it's a combination of passion for the topic, passion for the way of doing things, and also and technical know-how. So just being quite willingness to look at the different technological solutions and then combine them together. It is definitely a combination. I wish that I can say AI is doing this for us today. Maybe it will soon, but right now it's not quite there yet. And so we do use some smart tools, so some machine learning tools that we have developed together with the lady that worked with us through the Vinova grant. But we do also have a lot of other tools that we have been using, some off-the-shelf tools, some smart spreadsheets, a combination of a lot of different ways. But of course, at the end of all this is some really dedicated, passionate people to say, hey, we want to make sure the information is up to date.
Yeah. And are you the only one? Are you the only ones working in the company? The two of you? Do you have students or do?
We have some very nice team members.
Yeah. How many are you?
8 people on our team.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Excellent. So you have people. My best guess is that you will have employees dedicated alone on identifying or updating funding schemes information in your database.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the key. That's your machine room, right?
The good thing is that we have developed quite a brand by now, so funders do come to us directly as well. And so we also allow funders to directly put that information. Of course, there's always editorial control, making sure that it's a reputable funder and everything. But yeah, there's a possibility to upload the information directly from the front end as a funder.
Do they do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Can you see the ratio between private and public government agencies versus
It's definitely the foundation funders.
Yeah, it's like this. So it's a database by researchers for researchers, and research organizations.
And research officers, actually. We get a
Yeah.
lot of contribution, a lot of the way we display the information, the way we put in different filters, the way we sort the information is actually based also on the feedback from the research officers.
Well, this is good. Because the other side there, of course, you have the business side, the industry, and those kind of grants. Do you include, like SME program stuff? Like, do you include business angled funding, or do you stay away from that? Is it exclusively only like?
I think it's one thing that is really important to recognize, right? So academic funding, what is the whole point of academic research? Ultimately, knowledge is great. We love it. But we also need to think about how these get translated into reality. And so that's why we have recognized this important part. And so the innovation funding that we do include are very much innovation funding with the idea of for spin-offs from the university. So that's the kind of SME or innovation funding that we do include. We don't necessarily include SME funding just for businesses, at least not right now, but maybe sometime in the future.
And Niels, there are many different ways to visualize our data. So in addition to the research funding database, where you go and you use the eligibility filters and arrive at funding that hopefully is suitable for the person searching, we also have a funder database. So you could look there to answer your question about how many funders do we cover. It's possible to look at the funders that are in our database, visualize them, and we're trying to be very comprehensive with how we present information about funders and all of the opportunities. So the information is connected. And for example, I have a passion project to interview as many foundation funders in the world as I can, possibly.
Yeah. Knock yourself out.
I have help with this project. We work closely with postdocs at the Karolinska Institute. Their career center has this fantastic program to give postdocs an opportunity to work in industry. And
so listeners out there, this is a Swedish research institute.
Yes. And these postdocs are paid to work with us through this program.
Yep.
It's fantastic. And so
of course it is.
These postdocs who come to us through this program for this experience, they're helping me with this project. So we're interviewing research funders. And so when you go to our database and you look at a funding opportunity, you can also see, have we interviewed them? And who did we interview at this funder? And what did they say about the funding? So we're trying to also make that connection for people. So they see the eligibility information, they see if they're eligible, but they can also read about it, read firsthand, read directly an interview with someone who works behind the scenes at that funder. And usually we're interviewing the funding managers at the funders who know all the intricacies of the funding and what they're looking for. And this is information we have as well.
Yeah, it's clever. Well done. Good idea. Huge work, but yes. Because it gives a different body, so to say. It gives a different feel. We all know how it is to read about a funny scheme. It's dryness of things you're supposed to do and not to do, and what you can apply for, and so on. So it always there's always a thought behind that relates to the real world. Yeah. So it's nice to have. It's a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it shouldn't be dry. I mean, this is the money that you need.
But you know what
to
it is.
solve the world's
Reading a
problems.
cold text, sometimes kills you.
Yeah.
My podcast episode on how to read the cold text, it's one of the most listened of my 111th episodes.
Oh.
But it's like this.
I have mixed feelings about that, if that's your most listened to episode.
But it is.
Yeah. Wow.
It makes what actually I've been thinking about. If that's the most listened, maybe I should do a whole series about reading the cover text. If it has so much interest. Just before we move on to talking a little bit about, because you have categorized your group of the groups of interestees, so to say. You have the individual researcher, you have the research officer, and you have the funders. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about how you shape your universe and your model. But before we go so long, we just need to talk about, because bills need to be paid. We need to live. Life is expensive. So you, of course, you have a business model around this. And how does it work? Is it, how is the access working? How do you live? how do you live out of this model that you set up?
Well, one thing we're really proud of, to start, we should say, we have an open version of our database.
Yeah.
Which is something that is significant, and we think it's important. And this means a lot of people use our database. Use the free version. They sign up for a free account, they use it. And I mean, quite simply, I mean, you can see this if you go to our database, you can purchase a subscription. So you can
so a
subscription to the premium version of our database, where you get more access to eligibility filters, more functionality. It makes it easier.
Yep.
So
in this podcast, you're allowed to talk about how you earn money. It's okay. I know researchers, they have a problem. your clients, your stakeholders, everyone out there. I know that you have many there that get an uncomfortable feeling with it's talking about money. I've been a grants consultant myself. I know how it is. So this is what this part. I have your back.
Yeah.
Because I totally support what you do here. So you're allowed to talk about how you built up this model. Hey, you got a good idea. It's okay. Yeah, it's of course you need to make a living out of that, and the researchers, if you have a good model, if you have something that helps them a lot, it's not a lot for them to pay a subscription fee to get access to these things, because if you build a database like this, I can already, from the short talk already have now, it's impressive. So digging out that, screening, mapping, finding available resources that can help them, of course it's worth money, because it's wasted time.
Yes.
Finding something else that you save them time, and time is also in the research money. That's money. It is very, it's the researchers. Now I'm already digging into the value here. Researchers are always short on time. They have so many things on their plate, especially the public, universities. They have to have classes. They have to follow PhDs. They have to make curriculum for next year. They have to make everything, administration, maybe internally institute if they have leading roles. They might even be a leader, so they also need to run management. And then on top of that, they do their own research. And with that research, within that time, they also need to apply for funding and identify where it is. So what you are doing here, it's something that takes that at least gives them just a little bit of help in they might be able to identify funding where they don't have to do so much as they would normally think for other grants that they would go say, but I can do this.
Yes.
So that's the value you create.
Absolutely.
Do you listen to me out there, dear researchers? Don't be cringy just to talk about money here. These ladies, they have a fantastic business model, so of course should be hailed for what they do.
Yes. So researchers pay for the premium membership.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's more so it's the universities, and the university research offices who purchase institution-wide subscriptions and then can pass that access along to researchers. And I think this is an important piece, is that researchers can talk to their research office and explain the value of the premium version that we have. And what's one thing I think about thinking about what we do is when the universities do purchase an institution-wide account, they have premium access, they pass it to the researchers. Many of the researchers are already familiar with what we do because they're using the free version. And then they're just, it unlocks all of the additional possibilities, and they're like, wow, this is even better.
The flower bouquet
Yes.
unfolds in front of their eyes.
Yeah. We like to see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very important point that I made. Like, I really, and I've done it in many other episodes when I have consultants, but don't be afraid about talking about money. Don't be shy, and don't be embarrassed to mention that you have a good idea that is worth paying money for. Nah. Let's move into your segments. Challenges of research and research offices. So those are, so you have three, but I pooled the research and the research offices because that's on the one side of the table, right? Maybe we should have a little bit of a talk about the challenges that they have, because this is what are you solving? Yeah. So can you open that up a little bit? Because you've been researchers yourself. So what are the most challenging? I can help you, but I'd like you to say it, because you know a lot about this, because you made this solution here. So can you share a little bit with the listeners and me the most common challenges of research and in a project funding?
Yes, absolutely. I think for researchers, the problem is they don't know all of the funding options that are available for them. They don't know necessarily all of the best suited funders or what's most attainable. So it's often the case that researchers apply for funding, that someone in their network says, this is what you should apply for, go for this. They apply, and they're applying to these very, very well-known funders, well-known funding opportunities where the competition is so intense and the success rates can be so low. And then when they find out they don't get it, what do? And they have to scramble to try and find something else. And I think it's important for researchers to think about all the options. And this is something that Judy and I really would like to see researchers have a mindset shift, in a way, to think about there are a lot of funders out there, and there are different options for funding.
Just to add to this, so what happens, when everybody in the world or everybody in Europe applies for the ERC grant, right? So we're talking like 10% success rates. And this is actually one of the reasons for the hyper competition that we see in research today, right? It's hyper competition when you're coming down to the 10% level. And really, what is the difference between the top 10% and the top 20% or the 15%, right? It's not that different. And so by not diversifying your funding portfolio, so if you only apply for ERC, so maybe that's why there's a lot of disheartened researchers who are very likely brilliant at what they do. And there's other funders out there that would fund them if they just open up their, spend a little bit of time doing the research to find more funding, and actually then be able to find and spend less time to focus on really the right applications for them, and not apply also just for everything that comes along, but really spend that time, because you have different options, and also timing, right? Plan your schedule right so that you have more time to apply for the right funds, and not just anyone that comes along just apply. And so I think that this will help reduce that hyper competition.
I think it's, well, at least it can diverge some of it, or make them aware of the fact that you have other places, because you have many researchers in Europe, right? But you're not, the ERC is the ERC. It's extremely successful. They have really reached what they wanted with that, a very highly competitive quality research grant for research. But it's extremely valuable what you're doing in the respect exactly what you're saying here, that like to lift their eyes a little bit away, that to see, because I can see from a Danish point of view, that's where I know best researchers, research organizations. So there you would have, yes, ERC, national funding. And then you might have some corners that they try to, if they are a little bit more skilled, they get themselves into a Horizon Europe Pillar 2 proposal with the institute or with the research team. But the diversity of where they can actually go, or where they think they can go, it's extremely valuable to have a tool that opens up you also have these things, because it's I think maybe when it comes to American research, it's even a lack of knowledge. If they can approach it, or if they can go somewhere else, they simply don't know. And if nobody's telling them, inside the framework conditions that I just mentioned, right? This reality that they are living in and working in, it's they are very busy people. Yeah, it's they have they just try to make ends meet without having to make a funding proposal or identified funding.
Mhm. I think, to continue with the question, when we talk about the challenges of the research office, I think it has to do with, they are really like squeezed from both ends, squeezed in terms of from the one part is, I think anyway, but I think Kate has a lot more experience in talking with research officers. So, but this is just some takeaway messages that I have. I think they are a group of very dedicated people working really hard, and in a way, sometimes it feels almost a bit like the work is almost a bit thankless. Like, it's so important what they are doing, and people may not fully appreciate, the amount of time and that they are there to help researchers be more successful. And so sometimes it's like it's two parts, right? So one is whether people even know about that they are there, and then the other part is the people that they get, they have massive workloads when it comes to these limited submissions that then get funneled through, and then of course there's the top administration that they of course want them to deliver even more. So yeah, I think they are in a very squeezed environment is how I interpret it. And I really hope that that we, through the work that we do, we can help them, and really, because that work is so important. They are there to make everybody successful, yet they're not taking that glory for the success.
Mm-hmm. And research managers, they're keeping tabs on an incredible amount of information. The people that work in pre-awards, they're tracking funding information for hundreds of researchers across many disciplines. And there are often research managers who don't have a database that they're using at their university, and they're keeping track of this themselves in Excel files and other. It takes so much time to get it right, and to keep the deadlines, to keep track of the deadlines and the changes with the eligibility criteria. Funding is a moving target, and this is something that we can help research managers with, keeping track of what is the most current information about all of the funding opportunities that are out there.
Does the tool have sort of tracking functionalities or stuff where I can say like a favorite function where I say I follow this one, and then when new calls pops up, it notifies you?
Exactly. Yes. So everything you can imagine in like a good online shopping website. Like I always like that. Instead of going shopping,
what people would expect. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
So yeah, you can have so there are favorites. So you can pin a grant as your favorite, and then you can have see this as a list. And then of course any information that gets updated. So if they have changed deadlines, or when it comes around again the next year, that information is of course always updated. So you don't have to worry about your spreadsheet getting out of date if you have that favorites. And then you can also, like one click of a button, you can add it to your calendar. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's there in your calendar. No excuses for forgetting, right? Yeah, alerts, as you mentioned. So, you can also sign up for alerts. So either general alerts, so anything that fits the criteria you get an alert, or a specific alert that if you have found a grant that you already are interested in, you just want to know when it's updated. We also have that function. So yeah, it's really important, these tools to help, because it's just so much information.
Research managers, they often need an overview. Does it make, or can you generate sort of a year cycle or a parallel view of the ones you're following when the deadline falls throughout the year? I'm just brainstorming. You can pick it up if you want to add it to your bit.
Yeah, you can use a favorites list that way, and also
Can I visualize it in one overview, saying like an overview over a year, saying here falls that deadline, here falls that deadline, here falls that deadline.
That definitely is not right now the functionality, but I know what you mean.
There's something happening in my head. So.
Very common what people are looking for, like a calendar view that they can see. Okay, so January I have 3 deadlines, and February I have 10 deadlines, something like that. I think what the very the really keen research managers, what they'd like to see from us is that we can export the data from our database, right? And then they can get really the 360-degree view of funding. And so we also help with that. If that's their preference, we can do an export of all the data they can possibly think of.
Because that's the research managers, they need to, it's the planning, right? When do I, when are the calls that I need to notify this and this research team the deadline, because you need time to submission, right? You need 6 months if it's a horizon, or less, probably small, but still you need a certain time to prepare, develop, and submit. And there, when you sit as a research manager, you need to have a certain overview is king, right? Getting up in the helicopter, being able to, okay, that's there. So these guys in biochemistry, they need to and these guys in the sensors over here, they need to so your filters can probably do that in relation to call area of research area. I don't know. Yeah, and then to give the overview that they need.
And they could keep different saved lists for different groups, or different search filters they could save for different groups, just to make it faster to drill down to exactly what they're looking for the different groups or disciplines and areas or career stages of researchers that they're keeping tabs. Yeah.
So when you work with the research officers, do you take feedback from them and incorporate it in the tool? Do you sort of on the running? Do you sort of adapt?
Yes. Yeah. I think this is something we're really good at. Every time we speak with a research office that's a client, and they have something that they would like to see, oftentimes it's something very simple, a simple UX request. We have been able to put these requests into play in the database. We have a great developer who works with us. She can solve anything we say. Oh, we'd like to do this. Is this possible? She can make it happen. So yeah, I think there are some examples of this. Sometimes it's something so simple as I want to see the number of search results. Okay, that's easy. We can make that happen in 2 seconds. So yes, we're taking feedback from the research managers who use our database and incorporating this feedback. And it's fun to go back to them and say, okay, we did this. How does this look? Is this exactly what you were
Yeah.
looking for? And it's definitely possible. Is there?
So thinking of your business model, subscription model, how far do you go? Are there suggestions where I say that's not possible within development or changes to the system, or when you get suggestions? I mean, you are who you are. You have 8 people, and some suggestions might be like beyond what's possible to fit into.
Priorities that we have to, prioritize based on what are the low-hanging fruits, right? So, if it's easy to implement and more customers want it, then of course we go for those first. But ultimately, it's really, I think this process, it's really fun as well. I call it co-creation. Taking what the customers say, what they need, what they think they need, what their challenges are, and really turn this into something useful. I think that's really a fun thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So, because you're researchers yourself, you come from the environment. Yeah, you are what you sell, so to say. You are what you have created here. How much do you use that? Because you transition yourself into also being a business person when you develop a solution, right? But how are you more researchers than owning a company? You understand what I say?
I would say for myself, I'm just a curious person.
Yeah.
And I think, and I find that, when you have a startup and a PhD, they have very similar experiences. All you think about all day is what you're trying to do. So either it's your research question or your business, how to deliver to the different stakeholders inside that system. And making it happen, making it a reality. So I think that it's the same kind of experience in a way. And I never thought I would do another one of this. And I think, but this time around, I think I'm approaching it with a much better attitude. So I enjoy the process a lot more than I did the last time. So I see what's needed to maintain that enthusiasm in the long term. Okay, what do you think?
Well, I think in a lot of aspects of what we do, we're testing to see if things work. And I think we're both really good at keeping track of information in a way to see patterns and to see what's happening. And I think that in a way that's like a scientific process, right? Where we do testing to see what works and we adapt. And I think we're very good at just iterating on what we do and always improving what we do and learning from the people who use our database. I think that's really important as well. So to gather that information in interviews and structure the intake, the information when I interview people to find out, are there patterns in what people would like to see?
Yeah. I would also think, because the fact that you are researchers, it's a very different it's a very different conversation you have with the research officers, with the individual researchers, with the funding officers, than if you would have been coming from a grants consultancy side. Do you understand what I mean? So you know the world, you know the challenges. So when your solution comes from your knowledge of how that world is to be in, which should give much more credit, I would expect, because you can go into an equal conversation with them when you talk to the people who are supposed to take advantage of the tool that you developed. Yeah, it's what they are facing, their challenges, where the pain is, because that's at the end of the day, any company solves a pain. That's a successful company. Solve a pain for a group of people, or companies. You solve it, which means that someone wants to, okay, that's a nice idea, that I'm willing to step onto that train, and that to give that credibility and strength is the knowledge of the area. So it sounds successful. So I would say it comes from there. It's not just a smart business idea that someone came up with. It comes out of a knowledge of an area, that a need.
Yeah, I think, for any business, right? So you need to understand the customer.
Exactly.
And to be able to having been in those shoes, and I think a lot of research managers also have a research background. Most of them do. So it's a very similar experiences that we have shared. We know the challenges. We know the good parts, the painful parts also. It's part of the whole experience, right? And it's character building as well.
Yeah.
And I think I think some of the intricacies, of what are the subtleties within the environment, what people need, what we think people need, and sometimes I think people may not even recognize what they need, and I think because we have been there, we may be able to interpret that just a little bit better, I think, and quite honestly, sometimes it's like Kay said, it's an iterative process. We're testing, and we see if that works. If it doesn't, then we try something else. But ultimately, we want to get people more time to do the really important stuff, the research, right? And finding funding is just it's like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to do. And so much fun things to do, but we tend to actually quite like structuring data and getting the funding information to people. So for us, it's actually fun. But I think as a researcher, maybe that's just like, oh my god.
Do you? It came out of when I did the rundown here. Do you also do funding strategies for research organizations? Do you step into that kind of thing if they ask for this kind of service, or do you stick to your database service? Or how?
It's a good question. So we do provide consultations during the search process, and we've been successful in helping researchers identify new funding options. And
do we make a plan for them?
We can, yes. So we have a consultation service, and often the people the researchers who have used this service are looking for new options. They don't know where to start, and we've had success stories. I actually heard from a researcher in the U.S. recently, clinical researcher who did more clinical work and was not so often applying for funding and didn't know where to start, had a really great idea. And we see all of the funding information, so in a way we might almost have it memorized every
sort of looking through the matrix.
But we also know how to find it. But when I met with him and he was describing what he was trying to do and what kind of funding he was getting, it was very clear to me, oh, I know exactly what funder you should go to, because I interviewed them actually, and I thought this is a perfect match. And I gave him that information. He reached out to the funder, and he got the funding. So yeah. And I don't think he would have ever discovered this particular foundation funder.
No, that's the idea. That's the service. Now, I think I'm happy to hear that. How are you growing? Are you doing fine with before? Because I know I'm mixing a little bit with talking about your groups here and the company. So, but how is it going? Are you on a steep curve, or just steadily, or how are things going?
The traffic has definitely grown tremendously, over the year. So traffic-wise, I think we are threefold from last year. So it's definitely really a lot of traffic. A lot of enthusiasm also from the community. So, we have a lot of collaborators with for webinars and different networks, different societies that are getting in touch with us. And AID has a lot of conversations with different research offices. So yeah, there's a lot of things cooking.
Yeah. The reason why I asked, now I worked for P&O previously in my career, and they also had they had a place called Innovation Place, and they were trying to gathering you could search for calls and funding through that platform, but it wasn't very successful. It's not to throw mud after an old employer, but the truth is it is not. And they tried to, first of all, they tried to marketing it, but it's not. And then they started to add funding schemes from Italy and from France and so on, but it was here and there funding schemes, so it wasn't consistent. It was like, it's all of Europe. Like, if you want to start with, they started to fill it up, but it's that's why I'm impressed by this. Yeah, because it's basically the same thing they're doing. It's just also covering industry. Yeah, so sort of broadly speaking, but the approach is the same. But you see, you're talking of a company with 400 employees. And I'll also, get to different parts, I know, but still, you as a unit, you have, I think, the core element to why you are succeeding what you're doing is that you have a very sharp focus. You might want to cover many funding schemes, but it's researchers, research organizations, and the funding administrators. That's the core group. That's what we work with. And then finding funding schemes related to that, and then just
I think because innovation funding is such a huge space.
Yeah.
Right. It's so much, and I think also, the fact that we have a very targeted audience, and we know this audience very well. So it's we know how to, in a way, reach out and scale that outreach.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we work with a lot of societies. We work with a lot of and research influences, all those that will help us multiply that message.
Uh-huh.
And I think also what's really important is actually having that open part, right? So you can use our platform without even logging in. So that, I think, really helps with the organic traffic that we see.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is I think that's also what the main goal. Of course, it's great for traffic, but I think it's about this uptake of the database to help people familiarize with the concept. Right? As Kate said, most researchers are not familiar even with the research funding databases that the institutions may have subscriptions to. And so, and I think it's not just a research funding database specific problem. I think it's a lot of, there are some amazing tools that the universities have subscribed to. And because of this communication, and people focus on their research. They're not even taking advantage of all the different supports that they have. Mm-hmm. And by having this open option, then we can work with people's workflows. And I think that's one thing that's also really important. How are people doing their search these days? Are they going necessarily searching through the university website, or are they going just through Google? Or maybe it's like the next version is, are they just going through ChatGPT? And then this, how do we incorporate us into that knowledge base? But new challenges, and it's part of the fun.
Better get moving here. Time is flowing a little bit. Just shortly, it's not going to take long because we already talked a little bit about it, but the funding organizations, you already mentioned that they picked up, but you also have made a solution that I checked on your website, that you can put in your information yourself. But advantages, naturally, it's quite simple for them to join you. That's obvious. They get more people to apply for the funding. But can you share a little bit with the listeners on how you work with them, the funding administrators?
With the funders, yeah. So I think we appeal particularly to funders who are looking to they're seeking more applicants, or maybe better suited or more qualified applicants. And a lot of funders, and I'm thinking a lot about foundation funders here that I've spoken with,
Yeah.
are looking for more global applicants, and they
Mhm.
don't know how to find them. And so this is where we are very helpful. So as an example, there was a funder that I interviewed, and after the call closed and they had made their selection, he wrote to me and said, "We had 3 times as many applicants this year as we
Mhm.
had in the previous cycle." Thank you. So I think by having the information in the funding database, the funder information, but also these interviews, everything that we do to bring more visibility to the funders, it's clear they're getting more applicants. I'm working with a funder now. Have been speaking with her, and she's actually put in the intake when people apply. She's asking now, "Where did you hear about our funding?" And
Mhm.
she wrote to me and said, "I'm going to add something that says scientifyRESEARCH, not just the internet." I think a lot of she's trying to gather
Mhm.
information, to get more applicants, and trying to find out where are people discovering the information about this particular funding scheme. And so she added this. I'm really curious to see, because their call hasn't closed yet, but I'm really curious to see how many people actually
Yeah.
tick that box. I heard about this funding at scientifyRESEARCH. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is it? Do they pay anything? Are there anything for them where they can get more out of being connected to your databases? Have you made any model for them, or is it just they can just fill it in with no charge? Or how's that?
Yeah, we have a membership model as well for funders. So
Yep.
to start, it's completely free for their funding information to be in our database. That's free.
Mhm.
There's no cost to have your funding information in our database. We want as much funding in the world as possible in our database.
Mhm.
And so that's free. So we also have a free account that they can make, where we give them more attention. We prioritize when they give us information. They become a priority. And then we have paid memberships as well, where funders can pay for more visibility. And there are a lot of different ways
Yeah.
that we can bring more visibility to their funding. Perhaps having a paid advertisement where we have space on our website where it's more visible, or
Yeah. Yeah.
boosting
Yeah.
their funding to the top as a paid feature funder.
Sort of Google-ish,
Yeah,
or then so
or
like.
add space in
Yeah.
our newsletters. And of course, we always
Yeah.
indicate this when it's sponsored. It's really clear. So
Sure.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't know, Judy, if you want to add more to that, but this is something that,
That's a little hacks, right? This is what you need to do when you do what you do. It's I've been doing what I do as a podcaster. It's there are also small tricks here and there when you move into monetization, right? But this is one of them, is in the world that you're
yeah, and
leading.
it's incredibly valuable service for the funders. For the funders that are looking for more reach, this is something we can do for them, because we have that.
Do you offer them? Do you offer them traffic of how many checks out their grant or something like this?
So in terms of the data on the traffic, we can, we do also provide them with reports. So they can see the breakdown of the traffic that's coming through. The countries, for example, the duration of the traffic, and what else is about the traffic? Maybe the gender, at least according to Google. So as much as Google can track, and also of course with all the consent, so they have to be of course compliant. We have to be compliant with the data we provide, but we always anonymize the data for people that are coming through, even with the Google tracking. So we are sure that we are very compliant with this. But of course then, with the consent and everything, then of course the information, the detail is also a little bit could be better. But I think this is, of course, it's a compromise.
it's like, it's also a matter of where to put the weight on the leg when you develop something like this. It's and then as you move on company, then you might be able to add more of these things. So you're like lifting. It's also a matter of, I guess, Google AdWords, or how does it, like where you get the information, you might be able to get better solutions and so on, how to track data better, stuff like this. But it's like it sounds like you did a good job in sort of making it valuable. Because that's what you need. You need them to fill in those data, because there's a lot of funding out there. So we better make them do it themselves than you, and then offer them something where say, that's nice.
Sure. Yeah. The visibility is really it's amazing what we can do for funders, and it's really fun when we hear from funders and they say, it has a like more, not just more, but also more diverse and more quality applicants, and so that's really nice to hear.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else on this research funder?
I think it's really important, when it talks about funding, what we do is one part, right? So we help people find the funding. But I think it's really important, like people like you, Niels, to actually, once people get that information, they still need a lot more help. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's so much more to that. Just identifying it is one part, but making a successful application, right? And so, Niels, this is your area, and I think this.
I don't do that anymore. Now I just tell people on the podcast how to do. I used to do it. I'm not going to do it again. Destroyed me. It's very. I don't like at all to write proposals, so that I'm not going to do anymore. But but I know exactly how to do it. So it's yes, I have been doing it. Yeah.
And sharing those insights with people, right? And I think some of it, it's in a way it's scalable to just teach people how to do it, and then I think also it may be more useful in the long term, right? I mean, one thing is you hold people's hand, but it's even better if you can teach them how to fish. It's even better. But like those little, like there's so much subtleties to this, and it can be fun, but it can also be really frustrating for the beginner, and even for the seasoned grant writers. It's still time consuming, and it's probably not the most fun part of their life as a researcher. And the more, we can make that a bit easier to really help that science come out, the research come out. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, right? I think we have the same common mission: how to alleviate some of that administrative part of the process and help people really focus on what they love to do, which is research.
You have, better than me, but you have these categories of researchers, right? You have the ones that, like, go away from me, I just want to do my research. They just want the fund. They're university professors, and they have always been university professors, and they just want the government base funding for the so they can sit and do whatever they want to do until they retire. Then you have the middle group that they do them once in a while, but then it's not something they rather wouldn't. Yeah, but they know that if they need to continue with the research they love so much, there's no way around it. Yeah, they need some external funding, and within that group, you have some that like it more than others. You have some that actually does it more often. And then you have the last segment. And they are almost professionals when it comes to research funding, right? So they do their research. They have managed to strike a balance between doing everything we just talked about. What it is to be a researcher, right? Researching themselves, PhDs, guidance, education, so on and so forth. And then finding a way to also applying for all the right funding. They have all the right networks. They get invited all the time into flagship consortia and so on and so forth. And those are the groups that you are tapping into. Those are the ones you help. You help both the ones that are strong, but you might help even more out from the middle group to navigate. Those are the ones that research managers that work most with. They help the ones to navigate. Yeah. to make them realize, this can actually, it's not that difficult, or there's funding there, or there's funding there, and or there's an NCP, something called an NCP that can help me if I have more questions, stuff like this. Practical examples. Do you have any nice stories? You just had one. You just mentioned one, Kate, that you had a conversation, and he got the funding from a grant he would never had come across if you hadn't had the conversation. But do you have any other,
This is what I love most. This is what helps me stay motivated, is hearing from people, hearing the success stories. There's recently, actually, we received an email from a postdoc who we didn't even know. It was not someone we had ever had a conversation with, who wrote to us and said, I love what you're doing. This is great. I found my postdoc money thanks to your database. I was thinking of leaving my research career. So thanks.
Yeah. Changing lives.
Yeah.
It'll be your new science about changing life. Change your research career. Make it happen.
I wish we could change everyone's life, but there's the next step, which is actually writing a really good grant application, right? So, but I think, if we can be the game changer at that first point where people are identifying their options, I think that's great. And I'm sure we've helped more people. I think I don't think everyone would even write to us if that was the case, but it's really nice to get emails like that, and the consultation that I did, that was the first consultation that I had ever done. And it was a success. That's really exciting. And we'll see. And it takes time to see the success stories, right? Because it takes a long time to apply and but it.
How long have you been around? How old is the company? How old is the company? When did you start this?
3 years now. 3 years. We launched the website 3 years ago.
It's fast.
Time flies. It's really scary.
I started my podcast 2 years ago, so who's more successful? Don't step into podcasting. But we share the love for people getting back. I tell you, those are the moments I can always remember, the exact moment when I opened up a message saying, "Look, what a wonderful podcast you're doing there. This is helping me so much with what I do with this and this and this." So yes, I totally agree. Write us more emails out there. Send us more appreciation.
Well, we can see the appreciation in the traffic, right? So
of course you can. I can see the appreciation in my streams. So,
yeah, exactly.
That's the hard facts. Yeah, it's the hard appreciation. Future. So how? So are you? You look like you're ambitious, and you have a big heart for what you do, right? So, and what I would mention concerning, I mentioned the P&O, try something like, also there's a French company doing something different, a little bit like this. But what I think here, because these solutions, that is fundamental to get clients that they can write proposals for. So that's what their motivation is surrounded around, right? That's why they make these. But here's something different. Yeah. You need to live, right? So you need subscriptions and so on to make the model with. But you're not looking for clients to write proposals for. You need hard profit, so to say, this kind of big assignments. So it's a different business model. It's a different trajectory. And this is why I like it. So you have narrowed in on facilitating how to find funding resources, right? What are your ambitions? Is something you want to share? Do you want to share that? Where are you going? Because all businesses have sort of, okay, then next year we have a strategy, we want to be there, or we want to. But do you have sort of, are you sticking to your concept, or are you adding like a Lego house, a little little annex or something like this? Are you thinking of? You don't need to share it if you don't want, but I'm always curious to hear when entrepreneurs like yourself have done something like this, what you have in store for.
Yeah. Well, I think it's quite clear that we want to be the go-to resource for funding information.
Yeah.
Globally. We want all researchers and research managers to think of us first when they think about searching for funding. I think that is
It's a very clear ambition.
clear. And funders as
Yeah.
well. We want funders to think of us when they need to distribute information about their new calls. If
We have to be on Scientify. Yeah. We need to be there.
You think so, scientify? That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good ambition. And you're moving
Yeah,
there.
and I think it's realistic.
It is.
I think it's realistic.
Of course it is. But you always have something. There always needs to be a next hill you need to climb, right? It's like this being. It's also what I'm doing here with my podcast. There's a hill, and then when you reach, there's always a silver lining there. You need to there. So it's good to have an ambitious target that is realistic. We're almost done. Before we go into the toughest challenge, is there anything you have at heart? Anything you want to share with the listeners, or anything? Because you messages too, because there's lots of researchers that listens to this, and also research managers. Have many research managers listening to this.
I think for researchers, it's really so the advice would be, yes, open your eyes. Sometimes look around you. It's important to focus on your research, but sometimes it's okay to pause and look around you and look at the different resources there are to help you. So explore, not just us, but like your research office, right? They are there to help you. And look at other societies that can help you. There's so many options, and your network, and sometimes just take away that focus on your research, because sometimes by looking around, actually, you can help yourself go forward even faster. So that's what I would say for researchers. Kate, maybe you have something for research offices?
I think for research offices, if there are research managers listening to this, I would ask them to write to me. Well, let's have a conversation and talk about what your needs are, talk about what we're doing, and see if it's a good match. I think we can help you, and I'd love to have a chat about our database. And
I would love to do more customization for you guys. I think there's always, whenever we speak with research officers, there's always very specific needs, and everybody's needs are a little bit different. And so I think customization could be really interesting. So if you would like somebody who could help you customize, we're here. I think for research funders, I really think, especially for those that are maybe in a bubble a bit more, and maybe you're seeing the same applicants year over and over, and maybe you're looking at diversifying. And I think this is where we can help you, that we can help you reach out to a different audience. And I think a lot of the time when I read these calls, and I'm like, so of course it's challenging, because a very common example could be like a medical funder is then looking for data science expertise to join to the funding call. And of course, a data scientist would never have come to think about applying for a medical funder's fund. And so this is where we can really help make that cross-disciplinary connection. And we love doing that.
Mm-hmm. I think, dear research managers listening out there, I think many of you, your baseline condition is that you're juggling a lot, and you're juggling a lot of very different conditions and difficult conditions in the middle of the web, in the middle of managers, research institute managers that maybe not totally understand Europe, and and then in between the research institutes and individual researchers, where you have very, very different, you're looking at very, very different people and capacities when it comes to these things. And so within that and supporting them, all tools help. So use the free version. That would be a recommendation from the grant. Check it out. See, because if you can help these kind, hard-working researchers that just so much want to do the research. If you give them diverse routes that doesn't end blind with the things that you would normally go for, check it out. That would be my recommendation from here. Then you decide if you want to go commercial. The grand toughest challenge. What has been the toughest challenge in building this facilitating?
Time is a valuable thing because we always want to do everything at the same time. It's for somebody like me. I have my personality. I'm like very, very driven and very demanding of myself. And so I would like to see things happen really like now. I'm impatient, and I have great ideas, want to get them implemented, but there's only so many of us. So I think time, is a challenge, but it's also the fun part. Yeah, that it's like you always have to think about, okay, how can I get the most out of my time now?
Mm-hmm.
I would say I find the challenge. Kate, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. I think it's having enough time to do everything that we want to do.
Yeah.
And then to know which of those what is the actual priority today? Like what will make a difference?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, I perfectly understand.
It's hard.
Is it? Have you experienced it challenging moving within the research world that are hesitating when it comes to paying stuff? Is that an issue? Is that something that when you started off, so that might be a bottleneck to develop a company where we actually earn money? That this hesitation of.
I think there's definitely a level of inertia. And of course it's thinking about, what is the reward, right? The reward for change, is that going to be greater, or is it safer to stay with the current status quo? And so, there's definitely that element. But, I think the people that want to do something, they get their work done. And they can push through and get through the administration and of course Kate is very patient. And that's a good thing. Kate is very patient at holding hands and gentle reminders and explanations and Kate writes best emails.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I think when I speak with research managers, it's usually clear that what we have would be valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they recognize, oh, if I find something new and we bring in more money to the university because of this database, it pays for itself. And I think that is quite clear to people. I think,
Yeah.
I think that is not necessarily a challenge. I think it can be, to be honest, it's a challenge to get individual researchers interested in paying. We do have a good number of researchers who do pay for a premium subscription, but it's much more likely that the research managers, the universities, would be paying for these subscriptions. And I think that's how it's structured right now in universities, right? That's the expectation. But the researchers that do pay, they're paying with funding that they have available to pay for the database. They're not paying out of their pocket most of the time.
Right, let those be the last words. I'm just going to shut the episode down before we say goodbye to the listeners. So, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to open up these entrepreneurs with all these good ideas how to, because it's basically a strong heart to make life easier for somebody out there. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed this as much as me. Do remember to go to my website, thegrant.eu. There's a lot of content in there if you like to listen to sound about EU funding. I have more than 100 episodes, and there should definitely also be something for you. It's categorized in there, so you can, if you have Horizon Europe, there's a tab. If you are a coordinator, there's a tab. If you're interested in Erasmus+, there's a tab, so on and so forth. So check it out. While you are in there, do not forget to subscribe to my email list. Regulars will know that is what spells success in the podcast world, to build a big email list. So please, if you have any sympathy at all with what I'm doing here, do subscribe to that. Finally, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where the fun happens. That's where the flow goes. And I have made the Grant site, the Grant company site, and I do try to channel people in there. I'm slowly inviting. You have credits in LinkedIn. I can't just invite all my contacts at once. So if you check it out, if you search in LinkedIn, you find the Grant, you'll find the site and check in there, because I'm going to try to channel all the flow of where I'm liking stuff and so on, sharing stuff that flows in there on the site. So do that.
Thank you, Niels.
That's it.
Thank you, Niels.
Thanks for coming around. That was lovely.
Yeah.
It's one of the nice things of doing a podcast. That's a good thing about doing a podcast, that you have very, very nice conversations with people. But it's not an interview, it's a conversation.
Love your style.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do enjoy Brazil, do enjoy Sweden, and let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You will find the link in the episode notes where you listen to your podcast. On the site of this episode, you will find a link to Judy's and Kate's personal LinkedIn sites, as well as a link to the Scientify website. In next week's episode, I have an introduction to the Marie Sklodowska Curie Actions funding scheme under Horizon Europe. The scheme is funding researcher exchange activities and is very popular in the research communities across Europe. I have my good old podcast colleague Ilaria Rodisi on board to take us through the program and how it works. You can indeed look forward to that. Finally, some of you might have noticed that I'm slowly starting up a collaboration framework for organizations that want podcast episodes for their own profile, flagging topics of importance for them specifically. Grant's consultancy company Inspiring Science have their own series now with 3 episodes flagging their capacities within different areas of supporting research organizations towards EU funding. And so can you. The possibilities are many. Flagging your capacities as a company, pushing a message towards the Brussels ecosystem as a research organization, promoting an important event, or boosting your communication strategy. The Grant offers a plug-and-play solution with a podcast host with 16 years of experience within the EU R&D field, which secures the solidity of the content. I'm not just a journalist. I'm a conversation partner that understands your perception. The Grant is also open to join EU proposals as a partner or subcontractor. Adding sound to the proposal communication strategy can be a strong addition to connecting with the project stakeholders and the world beyond the realm of the project. Reach out through LinkedIn or my website if interested. See you next week.